week 3 in CIT95 Python. So it was really fun this morning to go over your code for your week 2 learn together. A couple things I want to say is that, and I think there may have been, anyway, let me say it this way. If you use code, like I gave you an option to do on the Prime IO, just give us a reference. And sometimes I wasn't clear. I wasn't clear when I was looking at your output a couple times. And so you'll see me say this in your reply. So just get back to me like, did you? Right? Because maybe you felt like you had modified it enough. It wasn't. So, just like when you write a paper and you have to give references before you get information, the same is true with code. And I think the line is sometimes a little blurry. It's like, well, if I watch that and I see how they did it and then I wrote it, how much of what I wrote was that code and how much was I own? And so, if you did that, then say that. Really, it's okay. It's really okay to do that. And, I gave you the option to do it. And I looked this morning because I had created, and I'm not sure how many of you saw this, but it looks like at least 12 of you did. Like in my reply, Kelly beat me to the punch. Matter of fact, he beat me to the punch meaning beat me to posting last week. He's done it for next week too, is that I did a video just to go over my code and to give you a little more. So my first question for you is like, did you watch that? And was it helpful? Because if it's not helpful, if you're able to look at the code, because I will, of course, always post in a Learn Together my code example or the code I did. Because here's the thing, I never ask you to do anything I don't do myself. So, right, is something like that helpful? 12 of you, at least 12 views on YouTube tell me some of you watched it. Now I want in your reply to this one, like, was it helpful to you? And would you want to see me do this? Or are you fine just looking at the code as well? So kind of let me know that. So here we are in week 3. I have so far, this has been such a fun class for me. I've been doing quite a bit of work. I would say, don't tell my JavaScript students this, but I've been working harder on this class than any of them, mostly because this is because this is the first time through. So I'm creating original content based on First Owl for the code alongs, right? And because some of them, and you're going to see this next week, right? For the next section that we're doing. No, not for week 3. It's for week 4. Week 4, which I just got through working on, was the try catch block. But next week, I do actually take what you've learned in the code along and I give you one additional step to do. Okay. So just know that that's what I do is I do it myself. I think about how can we help you really gain that skill, right? So next week, now I get to go remind myself. I think this was 95, section 3. Oh yeah, and then one more. Yeah, so yeah. See, it's so funny. I'm drawing a blank of what the additional one was. Oh yeah, now I remember because I'm showing you here my Facebook post. Because I was asking about virtual environments and I'm still not sure how we're going to do that. Oh, I've gotten some good, but I want you to actually take that cut and paste. And actually Kelly wrote in, and this is going to be my other thing. Kelly, thank you, Kelly. You've been many of you have been doing some great support. So thank you for that. Kelly was talking about when you do the install, the pip is the Python equivalent to NPM for those coming from the Node.js background. So I, in the video, talk about how I had to run pip3 to get the install done. But I want you to not just install it because he didn't really do any coding related to that, but I actually had you create something that represented that you understood how to do it. Okay, so now having talked about this, one thing I'm going to do, and especially this is not so much true on the code alongs, although you should always do it. You should always test your code, right? for the code alongs, I obviously I look at your code no matter what. But starting on the Learn Togethers for week 3, I am adding one additional thing, and it's not really a big thing, but I just want to point it out to you. And of course, you can watch the video, but this is what I'm adding, is I want you to, on your replies, and remember, right, I want you to write a paragraph. I don't do word count in this class because I would hope you know what a paragraph is, and 1-2 sentences typically is not. So you want to have a complete thought there. But below your main post, I want you to cut and paste the output of running. And in this case, you have 2 programs you're writing for next week. So let me just show you what I mean, right? So if I, let me just do this. So if I was to run, oh, by the way, let me show you this. I can't even remember who showed me this. So whoever it was, please pipe in. But if I want to get to this directory, like I can just do this, right click, and then say open an integrated terminal. So rather than have to change that directory, it just does it. By the way, it's good to know how to do CD or CD, right? Back, to go one back or one forward, and you can do multiples in a row. So just good to know, okay? So let's say I run my, right? So that's my output, right? First thing it shows is that the output, now again, I'm not going over the code, I'm just showing, right, how you can copy that. And then at the end, right, so then you would also run your FizzBuzz, right, as well. And just like before, and like we started with, right, make sure if you're using code outside of this class or inspired somewhere else, just do that. So at the end of your post, right, and you could just label it like, step 1 if you wanted, or be more specific, you can just do that. So what we're going to be able to see there is that you actually did run your code. And the other thing is, when you write code, you should make sure that you have tested all branches of your logic. And so what I would mean by that is here, like in this, and I'm still working on this. This is for next week, and I actually haven't created a video for my code yet, but I ran it at least 2 times. And this is just some simple code to try to figure out how long it takes to charge a car based on the kilowatts, and I'm still working on the calculation. But the point is that I want to run it to where it hits all the branches of my logic, so I know that it is indeed giving me the output that I want. Okay, so that's why you want to think about that. Now I'm talking more about, right, making sure that you test all. Now, by the way, let me just say this here. There's a field of programming called test-driven development, where you actually write tests that test your code. And some people write the test and then write the code. Like, I know what my code needs to do. Like, here the test is going to do, and now let me write the code that I run those tests against. But in general, the idea of testing your code, I'm actually giving you just a very basic way of thinking about it here, is that when you run depending on how your code is running, you want to make sure you've tested all branches of your logic to make sure it does indeed do what you want it to do. Okay? Okay, so a couple things too. I have a few notes here as I've been thinking about it, because I went and looked at your feedback. And one thing I know Ephron said was about pseudocode, and I think pseudocode is good to do. And why pseudocode is good is that it makes you just write what you want your code to do in very simple language, right? Without actually focusing on the actual code specific parts, but and there's varying levels of pseudocode, but it is just a way to help you break the problem down. Because if you're coding something and not really, there's FizzBuzz, but coding something and not really thinking about giving it the idea of understanding the steps that you need to take, in some ways it just makes it harder. And along that same vein, the thing I want to say is that you should do the following, and you should do this with owls, and you should do this with your own work do the learn together. And for sure, because here we are in week 3, coming into week 3, and week 6 is going to be your first dev, where you actually are going to have to write something from your own, right? From creating coming up with a concept and then coding it. And we'll be talking more about that soon. But here's my point. You should write, and this is how I do it, is I write some code and then I run that code to make sure it's creating the output I want. I would never write the whole program and then try to troubleshoot it. You can do it however you want. I'm just telling you, for me, that would drive me nuts. So that's why I wouldn't do it. Okay. So that's what I suggest. So I've been seeing a good number in my office hours. That's great. I've had some people reach out to me just during the day. And as I said last week, if my schedule allows, totally, I will do it. If it doesn't, I'll say, hey, I can do it here or wherever, but reach out when you need help, because there's not just me, right? There's other folks on Discord. Like there's some really good activity of people supporting each other, right? And I've said this, so let me say this again. I am typically an early morning person. So I go work out, I come, I start working. Like today's Friday, and I've been looking at this and my eyes are tired and I'm done looking at it after a little while. I need a break. But I typically start around 7 and I finish around 6. Now on Friday, I try to kick off a little early, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're reaching out at 10 o'clock at night, hopefully, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, there's somebody else also up and that can help. So thank you for those helping out. Thank you for those posting. Keep that going. It's really good. The thing I want to say about Discord is please make sure you're in the correct Discord text channel, because there are every one of my classes, I'm teaching 4 different classes, every one of them have a channel. And if you're in the wrong channel, then you're going to hear stuff that won't make sense or that you won't care about. And it just gives you more signal or more annoyance, depending on how much it is, of stuff that you don't have to listen to. And you can mute. I think Ephron was also asking about this. You can totally mute it, and I actually do mute every notification. When I'm done for the day, I actually tell my phone, mute all my stuff, because I want to be off. I want to be like taking a break. Let me look at my notes here to see if I got it all starting. Oh yeah, the one thing you guys were asking me about at the very beginning, and I want to just cover it quickly, was the Git Ignore file. So for us, we will see this if we do a virtual environment, which I'm still thinking about. But what is that Git Ignore and why do we use it? So Git Ignore is just saying, okay, I have this local repo, and in this local repo, there are certain files I don't want to track because it's not related to my code. It's either VS Code settings, or this is a very common one on if you're writing Node code, there's Node modules. You heard me talk about that hopefully in week 1. But the point about that is, and as we move forward, there may be things, because especially if we use a virtual environment, because it's going to set up a folder, we do not want that folder to be pushed to GitHub. It just doesn't, it's like almost like hygiene, because GitHub is a way to tell other people about your coding. It's also a way for them to understand how well you understand what shouldn't be there. So it's like, and it just puts stuff on GitHub that you have to manage. And I don't know how many of you have gotten this, but I get these security things about GitHub saying this version has got to be updated, So Git Ignore just allows us to set patterns or specific files that we can tell our local repo, listen, when you see changes to these files, don't even track them. Leave them out of our tracking process. Okay? So just to say a word about GitHub, seems like most of you are getting this. And the one thing I just want to clarify is code alongs, I want you to give me your commits. But on the Learn Togethers, and it seemed like most of you got this, just give us a link to the folder where your files are at for that week. Okay? Okay, so I think the big things I'd review, and by the way, you can ask questions about any of this stuff that I've talked about, right? About, the new requirement I've added about making sure that your code runs without, because you shouldn't submit code. And I'm actually looking at ways I can automate this. But for now, I just want to make sure you're doing the work of making sure your code runs before you submit it, which I think most of you are, shouldn't be an issue, but I just want to formalize that for the next couple weeks just so we can see. And it's good because sometimes people are reading other people's code and they might wonder, I wonder what the output is. And they could copy and paste it and run, especially on from the Learn Togethers. But why not just give them that output and it shows us all that that code indeed does run. So any questions about that? Any questions about the making sure you reference code? And I know I talked about that there might be some gray area in there. So if you want to clarify that, that's totally cool. Office hours, I've already talked about those. Discord, I've already talked about. Please be on only the channel that you're in the class on. And I think that was it. I think that's it. That's awesome. All right. So we move into week 3 of our class. And so the most important thing I wanted to ask, was the video that I did for the Learn Together after you submitted it. Would you like to see me going forward do that? Again, I'm really open to what you need. But if just looking at code is enough for you, I'd like to know that too. So really, of all the things, I probably be most interested in that feedback from you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Peace out.